A tremor in the hand, a slight change in how someone walks. These are the signs of Parkinsonism that we can see. But what if I told you they're just the final echo of a silent breakdown, a broken circuit deep inside the brain? Today we're going to trace that circuit, right from the very first spark to the final result you can actually see.
So often, it all starts with a little tremor in one hand. But here's the thing, by the time that even shows up, a whole cascade of events has already been happening, sometimes for years. That visible symptom, it is just the tip of the iceberg. So our journey today starts with one big question. Where in the massive, complex world of the brain does this really begin?
Okay, so before we can pinpoint a location, we have to get a handle on the nature of the problem itself. And at its very heart, Parkinsonism is a fundamental disruption of one of our most basic abilities, the power to move.
And this definition, right here, it gives us the three main characters in our story. First, the problem itself. It's a movement disorder. Second, the culprit, a massive drop in a chemical messenger called dopamine. And third, the scene of the crime, a deep part of the brain called the basal ganglia. This is where it all goes down.
So, we've got our general location, the basal ganglia. But that's a huge neighborhood in the brain. That's kind of like saying the problem is somewhere in London. We need to find the specific address. We need to find ground zero, where this whole electrical and chemical storm really kicks off.
And here we are. We found it. The epicenter of this whole thing is a tiny, tiny structure called the substantia nigra. Now, its name literally means black substance, and for a really good reason. It's one of the only parts of the brain that's visibly dark. But its color isn't what's important. Its function is. This is the brain's main factory for making dopamine.
And this is where you can really see the problem at a cellular level. In a healthy brain, the substantia nigra is like a bustling city of these dopamine-making neurons, all firing, all communicating. But in the Parkinsonian brain, that city just goes quiet. The neurons start to wither, and then they die. The dopamine factory is literally shutting down, piece by piece.
And when a factory that important shuts down, it's not just a local problem. Oh no, it causes a massive supply chain crisis. The loss of these neurons cuts off a critical communication line, and that just wreaks havoc on the flow of information all through the brain's movement centers.
This communication line has a name. It's called the nigrostriatal pathway. The best way to think of it is like a superhighway. The dopamine molecules are the cargo trucks traveling from that substantia nigra factory to other parts of the basal ganglia, and they're delivering these absolutely essential instructions for smooth, coordinated movement.
So you can see what happens next, right? As the dopamine factory shuts down, there are fewer and fewer trucks on the highway. The messages to control movement get weaker, they get garbled, and pretty soon, they don't arrive at all. The communication line is broken.
Now this broken line creates a whole new problem. It starts a chemical tug-of-war inside the brain, where one side suddenly loses all of its strength and the other is left completely unchecked.
You have to understand, the brain is all about balance, especially with its chemical messengers. Dopamine's job isn't just to send go signals, it also keeps another neurotransmitter, acetylcholine, in check. They're like two ends of a seesaw. But when dopamine levels plummet, that balance is just destroyed. Acetylcholine is left completely unopposed, and it just starts running wild, overstimulating the system and creating total chemical chaos.
And that chemical chaos isn't some abstract idea. It has real physical consequences. It's this unopposed, out-of-control acetylcholine that directly causes the classic symptoms we see: the resting tremors, the stiffness in the muscles, that slowness of movement, and the problems with balance and posture.
Okay, so we've got a chemical imbalance. But how does that actually translate into the brain physically slamming on the brakes? To get that, we need to look at the brain's own internal control system, this constant battle between go and stop signals.
So this is basically the master control panel for your movement. Think of it like this. Your brain has two pathways that are always competing. You've got the direct pathway, which is basically a go signal. It starts a movement. And then you have the indirect pathway, which is a stop signal. It holds back movement. Now, normally, dopamine acts like a traffic cop, perfectly balancing these two. But in Parkinsonism, that traffic cop just vanishes. And without dopamine, the stop signal gets way too loud and it just shouts down the go signal. It wins out every single time.
And this, right here, is the final piece of the puzzle. The reason movement becomes so incredibly hard is because the brain is literally fighting itself. Every single conscious command to move, to get up, to walk across the room, to just reach for a cup, is immediately being vetoed by this powerful, overactive stop circuit.
Wow, we've gone pretty deep into the brain's wiring. So now, let's zoom back out and just watch how all these pieces connect, like a perfectly lined up row of dominoes just waiting to fall, one after the other.
So here it is, the whole tragic story in 4 steps. First, the dominoes start to fall when the dopamine-producing neurons in the substantia nigra begin to die off. Second, this makes dopamine levels across the brain's movement centers just plummet. Third, without dopamine playing referee, the brain's stop signal completely overpowers the go signal. And fourth, the final result, movement is constantly being blocked, leading to all of those classic physical symptoms. A devastating domino effect.
If you were going to boil this entire complex process down to just one single sentence, this would be it. At its core, Parkinsonism is a dopamine deficiency disorder that leads to an over-inhibition of the body's movement circuits. Simply put, not enough go and way too much stop. That's the heart of the condition.
And all of this, everything we've talked about, leads us to one final, huge question. If we know the core problem is just a missing chemical, could the answer be to just replace it? Can we just refill the tank? That simple-sounding question is the driving force behind decades of research and treatment. And believe me, it opens up a whole new chapter in this story.